Hello again, this is Great Work, helping people who do work we care about have better working lives, with me, Adam Sandel. And something new this time, it's not just my voice you're going to hear, because we have a Great Work guest. Lessons about work from a middle school teacher. Working as a GP, you soon learn that if a teacher's made an appointment with you, more often than not, it's for something stress-related. This means that there's a lot the rest of us can learn from teachers who figured out how to navigate their working lives without giving it all up to become florists. And in this email, I'm going to share some of that learning from Sarah Wendel. Sarah's a mid-career middle school teacher in Colorado, a parent, and part of the Great Work community. Sarah's the kind of teacher you'd want to have, the teacher you'd want your kids to have. She's no braggart, but talking to her, I'm a little overwhelmed by how much she cares. She's excited by ideas, and she gives herself to her students, yet has also learned to take care of herself and ensure her family doesn't pay too high a price too. So what can we learn from Sarah? Here are 4 of her strategies. Lesson 1, boundaries at work.
I'm a real empath, and that's a blessing and a curse. I wear my heart on my sleeve. And that makes me a great teacher because students, they see that, and it makes me a really great relationship builder with them. But because I've been doing it for a while, I've learned that I have to really set boundaries with them because they take advantage of it because they're teenagers. You know, I've made mistakes, of course, where they've taken advantage of me and my vulnerability.
Great work is for people who care about their work. It'd be so much easier not to give a shit, but how meaningless would your work be then? Giving a shit, though, comes at a cost, vulnerability. And a second cost, we may find boundaries harder to set. We value those connections. We're keen to help. We need to feel needed. What boundaries you need depends on the work you do. For Sarah, it might include censoring with her teenage students some of the emotions she'd reveal to others. For me, a doctor, it sometimes means prioritizing what I can do for patients medically, remembering my limits when things start straying into social work, mentoring, relationship therapy, non-medical advocacy, or other realms. In fact, if you work with marginalized communities, whatever your role, and you give a shit, you end up doing little bits of all of those things and more. And in a rural setting, you can't help having students or patients who are also friends, neighbors, and colleagues. The trick is to be aware of what's going on and of the power imbalance, and to set, and sometimes discuss, sensible boundaries. You learn to set boundaries by doing the job, making mistakes, and figuring out where your boundaries need to be. Yours, Sarah's, and mine will all be drawn a little differently, and that's fine. Those who run into difficulties are those who don't think, where should my boundary be? In this role, or with this person, or in this interaction? Lesson 2, boundaries around work. How easy do you find it to switch from work to non-work? Some people can flip a switch as they finish work for the day or the week. Others, including me, can ruminate on some work problem all evening and through the night when we should be relaxing, spending time with people we love, doing things we enjoy, or sleeping.
And so usually after school, I have some time before I pick my kids up where I will run errands, or I'll go to an appointment, or do something that kind of gives me some cushion instead of walk out my school door, drive down the street and go get my kids. But I need a little bit of cushion time to transition from my workday to turning on mom mode.
I'll sometimes meditate for a few minutes after a heavy day to clear my mind and reset for the evening. Too tree hugging for some maybe, but meditation works for me. Then there's work intruding outside of work.
I've always been pretty good about not bringing my work home with me, like physically. I will leave my computer at school because most of my stuff's digital. The tricky part is the mental stuff. If I get an email, so I try not to check my email once I get home, because that's when I get to my chance to deal with my own children's stuff, is when I'm done with work. And so if that's when I get an email, I just perseverate, and I have a hard time putting an end to that unless I deal with it or respond or whatever. And then I can move on. I have to close the door on work, metaphorically and physically, and not look at my work email. If I don't have my computer, then I can't do any of my computer stuff. And then I can just be fully present.
Leave your work computer at work if that's how work works for you, and make it hard to check your work email. Could Sarah take her work email off her phone or get a separate work phone, or somehow make it harder to check her work email when away from work? It's when you're most stressed that you're most likely to check, seeking, but perhaps not getting, reassurance that there's nothing there. Lessons. Think about how you switch over at the end of the day, shelving work and immersing yourself in whatever you want to be immersed in. And do what you can to prevent work from intruding. Practical solutions like Sarah leaving her work laptop at school, or technological solutions like setting your phone to block work texts out of hours. Lesson 3. Humility is helpful, imposter symptoms aren't. When Sarah first began teaching, she was working with a predominantly Latina population.
I was a minority in my own classroom, and I had never had that experience before.
And this was on top of being new to teaching.
For really all of my life, my memorable life, I'd been surrounded by people who looked like me and who were like me and came from a world very much like me. I distinctly remember my first couple of years of teaching. There were moments that were very, very challenging.
And so here she is, right at the beginning of her career, and she's experiencing the imposter syndrome. But that wasn't because of inexperience, she explained. She told me it was because she was white. And of course, Sarah was right to recognize her limits. She was trying to help kids grow into wiser, more adult versions of themselves when she didn't have the expertise to fully understand what that meant. But if you do work that matters, you are always going to be able to find reasons to believe that you're not up to the job facing you. And that humility will make you better at whatever it is that you do. You'll reflect on what you can do. You won't pronounce on or do things when you really shouldn't. And you'll speak to others as equals, not from on high.
I'm so thankful that I did have that, because I really believe it made me a better teacher and educator because of that experience.
As I've talked about before, imposter symptoms commonly derive from 3 beliefs: that you're not as good as everyone else, that you're not up to the task facing you, and that something awful's going to happen as a result. Those 3 beliefs are almost always objectively false. Sarah wasn't a member of the marginalized ethnic groups she was teaching, true. But it sounds like she was up to the job nonetheless. And nothing awful happened. In fact, it ended up being a good experience. She learnt from it. Fix the false beliefs consistently, and you fix that horrible feeling of being dangerously out of your depth. Humility's good. Imposter symptoms aren't. If you struggle with imposter symptoms, you might find 2 previous episodes, and as always, there's an email version too, useful. One's called Remember, Everyone Else is an Imposter Too, and the other's The Imposter Phenomenon, Not Just in Your Head. Lesson 4. Repair conversations. So I've previously talked about the importance of good working relationships and why we should and how we can have difficult conversations. But how do you fix bad feeling? Sarah has a lovely term for this.
And there might still be some lingering stuff, like if I had a bad interaction with a kid, those are things that I might perseverate on and think about of how I could have done something differently. I will often have a repair conversation with a kid the next day once I'm in a better place and they're in a better place if I didn't do it that day at school. And so I think about that kind of stuff.
Repair conversation. I love that expression, and I'm going to be stealing it. If you're someone who finds difficult conversations, difficult, have a look for the previous episode called Have Difficult Conversations. But there's another point here. It's the evening and you're worrying about some difficult exchange you had with someone at work. Okay, you can tell yourself, tomorrow, when the moment's right, I will have a repair conversation. Now shelve that, come back to it tomorrow, and enjoy the evening. Talking to Sarah, I had the sense that, from her perspective, she's still grappling with how best to navigate her tough working life. I think that's how it seems to most of us. It does to me. But whether or not it feels to Sarah like she's nailed it, she's figured out a lot. And it makes me feel better about the future of the world to know that there are teachers out there like Sarah navigating their working lives, preparing their students to navigate theirs. A big thank you to Sarah Wendel for sharing her wisdom and experience. If you have a story about navigating tough work that matters to you, that you'd be willing to share, do get in touch. You can email me at adam@adamsandell.com. That's adam@adamsandell.com. That's it for this time. Thank you for being part of the Great Work community. If you're getting this via a podcast app or YouTube, do sign up for the email list at www.adamsandell.com. That way you'll get the podcasts emailed to you when they come out, embedded in an email you can read if you prefer. And it's the link to share if you know anyone else who might be interested too. Thank you so much for listening.